What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. So, Ukraine President Zelensky and Russia are both speaking here at the United Nations. Take a look at what Zelensky just said and what he's calling for. Take a listen here.
This call so many wars, but not as active defender against the aggressions. In many cases, the fear of war, the final war, was the loudest here, the war after which no one would gather in the General Assembly Hall again. The Third World War was seen as a nuclear war, a conflict between states on the highway to nukes. Other wars seemed less scary compared to a threat of the so-called great powers firing their nuclear stockpiles. So the 20th century taught the world to restrain from the use of the weapons of mass destruction, not to deploy, not to proliferate, not to threaten with, and not to test, but to promote a complete nuclear disarmament. Frankly, this is a good strategy, but it should not be the only strategy to protect the world from the final war. Ukraine gave up its third largest nuclear arsenal. The world then decided Russia should become a keeper of such power. Yet history shows it was Russia who deserved nuclear disarmament the most back in 1990s. And Russia deserves it now. Terrorists have no right to hold nuclear weapons. No right. But truly, not the nukes are the scariest now. While nukes remain in place, the mass destruction is gaining its momentum. The aggressor is weaponizing many other things, and those things are used not only against our country, but against all of yours as well.
Yeah, so let me know your thoughts there. Are we moving towards the final war, nuclear Armageddon? Should Russia be denuclearized? And is it even possible? That would be quite tricky because I don't know if it could be done. I don't think that Russia would even allow something like that to be happen. Also, look here. Zelensky calls for Russia to lose United Nations veto power. United Nations chief, remember, the United Nations is basically the world, okay? The entire world, all the countries in the world, the United Nations gets a vote. United Nations chief says humanity has opened the gates of hell. And you can see here, Zelensky calls for Russia's veto power to be removed. Zelensky calls for United Nations General Assembly to be given power to overcome the veto power held by Russia, calling it a necessary step. It is impossible to stop the war because all efforts are vetoed by the aggressor, the invader. Proposing an overhaul of the United Nations Security Council to broaden membership. He says Ukraine considers it unjust when billions of people do not have permanent representation in the Security Council while Russia does. He says world leaders are seeking new platforms and alliances that could reduce the disastrous scope of problems. The problems that are met here within these walls with rhetoric rather than real solutions with aspirations to compromise with killers rather than to protect lives. Also, Zelensky responded to former President Donald Trump's comment here. He's made this comment multiple times. recently here on an interview that former President Donald Trump could end the war within a day or within a few days if he became president. Take a listen here.
Putin said, quote, "We surely hear that Mr. Trump says he will resolve all burning issues within several days, including the Ukrainian crisis. We cannot help but feel happy about it." What do you make of that? Do you welcome his support?
I like that he said that, because that means what I'm saying is right. I would get him into a room, I'd get Zelensky into a room, then I'd bring them together, and I'd have a deal worked out.
He can publicly share his idea now, not to waste time, not to lose people. Yes, and say that my formula is to stop the war and stop all this tragedy and stop Russian aggression. And he said how he see it, how to push Russian from our land. Otherwise, he is not, presenting the global idea of peace. So the idea is how to take the part of our territory and to give Putin. And that is not the peace formula.
That is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky criticizing Donald Trump for promising to swiftly end the Russian invasion without offering, of course, any specifics on how he would do that. He'd just get him in a room.
And we already know why the war hasn't ended. Putin has told us this. China, kind of a Russian ally, has already proposed peace plans, and Russia turned down China's peace talks as well, because Russia says that they're not leaving unless they take over a significant portion of Ukraine on the Eastern Front. Ukraine says, no, we're not going to give them our land, our people, our resources, and then those people would become Russian property. Okay, so, and this was, even China couldn't make a peace agreement. So Trump would have the same exact problem. Ukraine says no. Russia says, well, we're not leaving unless this happens. So that is the problem with anybody walking in there, is that Ukraine doesn't want to give up its people, give up its land, give up its oil, give up its resources, give up everything that comes up with the land. And the exact same analogy to think about here is that when Russia said, and you could see the threat here from last year, not that long ago, top Russian lawmakers threatened that Russia may reclaim Alaska. Remember, Russia used to own Alaska back in the 1800s. The U.S. bought it from Alaska. Russian lawmakers said, oh, well, we could just reclaim it if we wanted to. Okay, this is similar to what they're trying to do in Ukraine. This is what they did with Crimea. This is what they've leaked plans to do in Moldova and Belarus and any country they could try to do this with, right? Top Russian lawmaker threatens Russia may reclaim Alaska if they just deem they want to, right? They could simply do a sneak attack, try to move into Alaska, and maybe even temporarily take over some land there if we weren't paying attention, right? And then say, well, we now temporarily have it. Imagine something like this happen, and then say, well, guess what? We're not leaving unless you give us the territory. So imagine like something like this happens, right? And say, hey, we used to own this. This used to be our territory. That sale we consider null and void back from the 1800s. We're reclaimed. This, a Russian lawmaker literally said this. Okay, guys, you can look this up. And again, this is a similar situation to what's happening in Ukraine, Crimea. They want to take over Moldova. They want to put back all the old Russian territory. This could include Alaska. Okay, so now you can see how Russia, literally the way Russians think, it could literally just be anywhere, right? So now when you start to see all this different wild-eyed crazy thinking the Russians think, you say, yeah, maybe they are really out there, right? So imagine if they did this to Alaska and said, guess what? We're not leaving unless we take part of Alaska back. This is what they're saying to Ukraine. And you can think Americans would never do that. It's the same thing Ukrainians are saying. They're not giving up their land. They're not giving up their territory. They're not giving up their people. Imagine the Alaskan people that are there saying, we're not going to become Russian citizens. We're not going to let Putin take this over, and then we're going to become Russian citizens. This is the same thing Ukrainians are saying. They don't want to do that. And remember that if they for some reason that were to happen and they were to become Russian citizens in some peace deal, then Russia would make them become part of their military, because they have drafts for anybody between 18 to 30 years old that their men have to become part of their military. So it's not like, oh, okay, there's peace deal, and then they just go on about their merry lives, and then they just become Russian citizens. No, then they have to go fight for Russia and give up their lives and become part of their military, and then go die fighting for Russia and pay taxes to Russia. And Russia's then going to go force them in their military. So it's not like, oh, the bloodshed's going to stop and they're going to go live out their lives. No, Russia's then going to go make the men that live on that territory go fight for Russia, and potentially a year or two later go fight against Ukraine again, because Putin's not going to stop. He didn't stop after taking Crimea. They've already leaked plans to take over Moldova, incorporate Belarus to be in Russia. They're trying to put back all old Russian territory. So let me know your thoughts here. Is this the final war? When is this going to end? Because it doesn't look like anytime soon. So make sure to subscribe down below. I'll keep you up to date here with everything happening. Make sure to like and share these videos. Click here to see what Russia is doing that people can't believe. Or click here to watch our newest video next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.